You want to defer to him? Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the last several years, we have seen countless Democrats across the country embracing the movement to defund or abolish the police. We've seen Democrats supporting district attorneys, funded in significant part by George Soros, who refuse to prosecute violent crime, who release violent criminals into our community. And the consequence of these extreme policies is sadly predictable. When they began demonizing cops, when they began advocating for defunding and abolishing the police, all of us who had worked in law enforcement said the result is going to be skyrocketing crime. And tragically, that is precisely the result we've seen. Nationwide, homicides increased 30% from 2019 to 2020. 27 major U.S. cities experienced a 44% increase in homicides since 2019. Homicides increased in 44 of the 7 major cities from 2020 to 2021, and over a dozen cities set new homicide records in 2021. The topic of this hearing, carjacking, has been particularly horrific. New York City carjackings quadrupled since 2018 to more than 500 in 2021. Philadelphia quadrupled since 2015 to more than 800 in 2021. New Orleans nearly tripled from 2018 to 2021. Washington, D.C., they're up 300% since 2019. Minneapolis, they're up 375% from 2020 to 2021. And Chicago carjackings have increased an astonishing 500% since 2014 after carjacking skyrocketed in 2020. All of these are endangering people's lives. They're endangering their family. They're endangering their children. Chief Garcia, Mayor of Dallas, Eric Johnson, has become a friend. And I will say you and the mayor have shown remarkable courage, bucking a national trend and taking on some of the extreme voices on the left, advocating abolishing the police, advocating defunding the police, advocating slashing funding for the police. And instead, the mayor, with you working along his side, have courageously argued the best way to protect communities, particularly low-income communities, is having an effective police force that is well-resourced, that is on the ground to protect people's lives. And as a consequence, Dallas was the only one of the top 10 cities in this country where violent crime fell in 2021. Chief Garcia, how harmful do you believe efforts to defund or abolish the police have been? And what's the best way to stop violent crime?
Well, first I'll say that I think there's just been a false narrative. And it's those in power believing the rhetoric that has been the issue. I'm not a stay in the office kind of chief, Senator. Whether it was in my former position as chief in California or chief now in the city of Dallas, I have not met a neighborhood impacted by violent crime in the city of Dallas, Texas, regardless of language spoken, racial makeup, or economic status, that has ever asked me for less police. In fact, unfortunately, it's our communities of color that usually plead for me for more. Yes, they want fair policing. Yes, we want to be just. Yes, we need to get better. But none of the neighborhoods that I go see want us to go away. And so there is definitely a disconnect between what we're hearing, the false narrative, and what's actually occurring in neighborhoods that are impacted by violent crime. The second part to your question is we need to ensure that the morale of the department is high. We need to ensure that communities know that we're there to support them. And then we need to make sure that we team up with scientists, doctors of criminology to tell us what the best practices are so that we have credibility not only to our community that what we're doing is not just something else that we're throwing up against the wall, but to our rank and file so they don't feel the same way as well. Because again, without the buy-in from both, no plan's going to be successful.
Thank you, Chief. I will say it's not just a few radical voices on the far left, but sadly the Biden administration, President Biden, has nominated 2 of the leading advocates for abolishing the police to senior positions in the Department of Justice, and astonishingly, every single Senate Democrat voted to confirm them. President Biden has nominated prosecutors who have been Soros prosecutors releasing violent criminals. He's nominated them to senior positions, and sadly, every single Democrat has voted to confirm them. Sheriff Dart, let me ask you a final question. In January of this year, you spoke to the New York Post about the pretrial monitoring program that you operate on behalf of Cook County. And you voiced concerns over the type of defendants that were placed in pretrial home confinement. You stated that you have 2,600 defendants on pretrial home monitoring, and 75 to 80% of those defendants sent to home monitoring, not sent to jail, are charged with a violent offense. What are the consequences of 75 to 80% of the defendants on home monitoring being charged with a violent offense? And are the district attorneys objecting and fighting? I understand the judges are sending them there, but what's the DA's office view on this?
Well, to your point, Senator, you're right. I mean, to the police officers out on the street, it's beyond demoralizing because so many of these are the folks that take us so much time to get the initial case against them. And then literally when they're back out on the street an hour later on home monitoring, it's very demoralizing. And so it's something that is, frankly, and it's been brought up here numerous times already, on the judicial side, it has been very, very difficult. I'm a former prosecutor myself, and you could talk all you want when you're in court on the bond side of it, but it's the judge who will make that ultimate determination. And I made it clear to them for home monitoring purposes, that's not what it was ever set up for. It was set up for drug offenders and people on those lines. And so when you put those folks out, not only is it very difficult for us to monitor them because that's not what it was set up for, but it's very demoralizing for the communities because they know full well that that guy was bad. He finally got caught, but now he's right back. And so it's been very, very difficult and very trying.
Thank you.
We often hear claims about defunding the police, and I'd like to enter into the record some information about significant increases in federal funding for state and local law enforcement under the Biden administration. The American